Back for some maths. We're focusing on number and we're looking at estimation, which should follow on nicely from our rounding, and it's a good job we're looking at estimation, because otherwise straight away you'd be going, actually that question's totally wrong, and you'd be correct. However, an estimated answer is not an exact answer, and that's always really important to work at, to understand. So when we're calculating and working out estimates, if you actually put the exact answer and it's asking for an estimate, it's going to be wrong. So that's something to bear in mind. Now, when we're looking at estimating, we're actually going to look at, first of all, finding near numbers, or linking to our rounding. We think about round numbers having zeros in and tending to be tens, or as close to that as possible. And again, depending on your interpretation of those round numbers, it's up to you as to what makes the question easier to estimate and answer. So we'll first of all look at our near numbers, and we'll have a look at some examples of where we could have a nearest 10, but it might actually benefit us going to a kind of an even more round number. So I've got some numbers here, and I'm just going to make them easier to deal with, and they'll relate to our questions when we move to those in a minute. So we still know our rounding rule, and we can apply our rounding rule. So if it's 5 or more, we're going to round up. If it's 4 or below, we're going to round down. So we absolutely can still apply that rounding rule, and that helps us make kind of challenging numbers to deal with nicer. So I know that's closer to 10 rather than 20. I know I'd rather have this as 40 rather than 39. Now here, it's where we start to have this confliction and making sure we're getting near numbers. So the nearest 10 is 90. However, it might be argued that for the question, we could also say it's close to 100, and it might be that that number is more appropriate to help us with an estimation. 200 is a rounder and nearer number and a nicer number to work with than 207. Here, 258 can instead, 458 can instead be 460. And then again, another situation similar to 91, it might be that we can work with 940, but actually it could be, for our estimation, working with 1,000 makes our estimation easier. And an estimation should be able to look at a question, not really need to do many calculations. So we can transfer these answers over now, and instead of me thinking about 14 add 39, I'm instead going to think about 10 add 40. So you can see I've used my near numbers, and that makes it nice and easy for me to say an estimated answer would be 50 for 14 add 39. For 91 add 207, I'm actually going to take the 100 instead and add 200. So an estimated answer there would be 300. It might be that you take 90, and actually it wouldn't really have much of an impact because we just have 290 as our estimate. I'm happy with 300 though, that's your choice. Instead of 937, I'm again going to pick 1,000. It's a rounder number, it's got more zeros, it's got more circles, it's more round. But this time we're subtracting, so it's really important to pay attention to those operations. And then we're going to take 460. And you can see in this case, if I was dealing with 940, it might be more challenging taking 460 away from it. But what I'm actually going to do is quite cleverly use my inverse. I'm going to start at this number and count up. So I know if I add on 40, that'll get me to 500, and then I need another 500 to get to 1,000. So there's my estimated answer. So you can see the purpose of this is to be able to take kind of tricky sums and tricky number sentences and be able to have a sensible guess, because that's what an estimate is, at what the answer might be. And that there's two reasons for this. A primary reason is, of course, to be able to estimate as a skill and use rounding. But actually, if we were just to work out these questions, it's understanding what a sensible answer looks like. So if I've taken, let's say, this bottom question here, And I've actually done 937 take away 458, and let's say for whatever reason I get 293 as an answer. Now that's way off what my estimate is, so I can see that's not a sensible answer. So if we can start to get in the practice of being able to estimate and think, well, what's close to that, what's close to that, and I know that answer, if I do 14 add 39, it's got to be close to 50. So I'm starting to look at what sensible answers are. If we look at the question I had right at the start, I wonder if you can think about, well, what did I change that number to? And what did I change that number to in order to get the answer 50? So instead of going to 90, I instead went for 100. And then in order to get my 50, because look, my estimated answer is 50, I've now got to think about, well, something take away 100 is 50. And of course, I went for 150, not 140. Just because it's just a more of a round number, and it's a nicer number to deal with. When you're estimating, it should be that your mental maths is able to help you with the calculations. So, just to recap, we can still apply our rounding rule of 5 and above we round up, 4 below we round down. So we can think about getting to the nearest 10, but it isn't always appropriate. It might be that actually we get to the next 100 instead, and we're dealing with as round a numbers as possible. You can see the difference in my questions. I've got a lot more zeros in my rounded number sentences, and that's made the maths better. It is also really important that if you are asked to estimate, you do actually have estimated answers, not exact answers. So it ensures we can have sensible answers when we actually calculate them, but they're not always exact. What I'd like you to have a go at is, I've got 3 questions and a challenge. As I said previously, be really careful with the operation, they're not all the same. Round them to numbers that you feel comfortable with, they're near numbers, and you might not get the same as me, and that's fine, but it's your estimate. Have a go, and then we'll go through some answers. Okay, I'm going to show you what I would have put as my near numbers, just so you can see where my answers are coming from. For A, instead of 49, I would have had 50, add 30. So my rounded answer would have been 80. For the second one, I'm going to pay attention to the fact that my operation is subtraction. I'm going to have 300. You might have had 280. You might have had 290. I'm going for 300. I'm going to make it as round as possible. And I'm going to take away 60. And now I've got a nice sum to do a mental calculation with. And my answer is 240. If you had 280 take away 60, that's fine, because that makes sense for the numbers you've chosen. I think 300 is a nice number to work with. And back for some adding. I'm going to round this one to 530. It might be that you put that just to 500. And then this, I'm going to take to 390. And again, I could have made that nice for myself. I could have had 500 and 400. That would have been fine. So I already know my answer's got to be near 900. But I'm going to put, I know I've got no ones, I'm going to put my tens together. So 90 and 30 is 120. And then 500, 300 is 800. So my answer's 920. So it's all about those near numbers and making sure we've got rounded answers. Now for the challenge, because we can estimate even with multiplication, is 40 times 40. That's what I would have chosen. And then just to make that even easier, and this is why it was a challenge, I'm going to use 4 times 4 to help me out, which is 16. Oh, don't want to put those on yet, just 16. And then because my answer's got 10 times bigger, because it's gone from 4 to 40, twice, that means it's got 100 times bigger. I'm going to reflect that in my answer. So the rounded answer should have been the same, 1,600. So, things to practice. Have a go at writing some of your own calculations and then working out the near numbers or the rounded numbers and the estimated answer. And then you might also want to work out the exact answer and just see how far away you are. And you'll be surprised actually how accurate some of the estimates are and how close you get if you round them correctly. But again, it's up to you whether you go to nearest tens or nearest hundreds or just get to nice near numbers. So have a go at creating some of your own questions, estimating the answers, and then working out the exact answer as well.